from several different places today, to be honest with you. We're going to be reading out of Acts, the fourth chapter of the book of Acts, the 12th verse, and we'll be going over to the book of 1 Corinthians, the second chapter. Acts, the fourth chapter, and 1 Corinthians, the second chapter. But we're also going to be talking a little bit about Nehemiah this morning. I've got you going all over the place this morning. We're going to be talking a little bit about Nehemiah. And if I had a thought this morning, it would be, I apologize. I apologize. You ever had one of those weeks where it seems like that no matter what you did, it just seems like you couldn't put your best foot forward. It just seemed like for every step you take forward, you slide 2 steps back. And it seems like that I've been stuck in that pattern of taking a step forward and sliding 2 steps back. And as I was thinking this week, I've been studying a lot about Nehemiah, one of my favorite characters in the Bible. I love the story of Nehemiah and his, as he was heartbroken over the state of Jerusalem, how that the walls of Jerusalem were broke down and how that it had been laid waste. And it broke his heart whenever he got to the place where he realized how bad Jerusalem was. And, you know, I've been thinking about church, and I've been thinking about all the things. I've been here 12 years, and I guess after you've been in a place for a while, and you come on your anniversary, I guess I always do this around my birthday, and I guess my wedding anniversary. I always look back, and I think about the accomplishments or highs and lows. I won't say the failures and successes, but the highs and lows of life. And as I come up on my anniversary here at church, I couldn't help but think about the highs and lows and the things that are accomplished and the things yet to be done. And as I do that, oftentimes I realize it's a trap. It's a trap. Because Satan oftentimes will jump in and he will knock down the accomplishments before he'll sure accentuate the shortcomings. I don't know if anybody else has ever had that problem that you can seemingly win some victories, but victories are short-lived and the memory of them are short-lived. But boy, those times when you may have not won the battle, boy, Satan has a way of really magnifying those in your view and telling you just how big they are and how bad they are. So the more I got thinking about it, the more I got thinking about this week, I was dwelling on it and I was thinking about things, and I said, I need to apologize. I need to apologize. You may say, well, what do you need to apologize for? There's so many things that I would love to see here at the church that I wish was happening. I wish that we had a thriving children's ministry, and I wish we had a thriving youth ministry, and I wish that we had a thriving song ministry. That's some of the things. And I realized that as I was thinking about this, there's a myriad of excuses that we can use for why those things may not be where we want them to be at this point. I mean, we're just coming out of the time of the pandemic and COVID and all those other things that go on. But Satan don't let you think about those things right off. He just tells you how bad you've done, right? I mean, there is no good reason why. So as I come this morning, as I was thinking last night, I was studying on Nehemiah. I was thinking about how that Nehemiah must have felt as he went. And in the first chapter of the book of Nehemiah, along about the 12th verse, Nehemiah, it says that word came to him. Word came to him that Jerusalem was laid waste. And in the 4th verse there it says that his heart was broken and that he prayed and fasted. And he went to God and he asked God, what can I do to make things better? What can I do to help out? And I found myself in Nehemiah's place. God, what can I do to make things better? Oftentimes I've thought so much about Nehemiah, what it must have felt like for Nehemiah, because Nehemiah took this great responsibility on himself. He went to the king, and as the king looked upon him, and in those days it was under the penalty of death, he was supposed to look happy to be a servant. And under the penalty of death, he went before the king with a broken heart. And when the king asked him what was wrong, he had to pour out his heart before the king and tell him, say, hey, listen, I'm broken hearted for what's happened at Jerusalem. And he knew that he could be killed for this bold, honest statement that he was making. as I do self-examination, and I don't know if any of you all ever take the time to do self-examination and self-reflection, but as I was doing self-examination and self-reflection, I have found that for me anyway, that I have to be very honest and raw with God. Oftentimes I would like to cosmetically make over my feelings before God. I would like to go before God and tell Him how good I feel about things, and I want to be feeling good about things, and I want to be positive and cheerful about things all the time. But I'll be honest with you this morning. Sometimes I've got to be like Nehemiah, just open and honest and raw. I found myself at that place this week, and I know this may be a strange message, but I found myself at that place this week where I was being like Nehemiah, and I said, Lord, I'm just going to tell you, I don't know what I've done to make you so bad. I don't know what I've done that I have gotten to the place to where it feels like every step I take forward, I'm stuck in the mud. And I can't get my best foot forward to save my life. And I try to be very honest about that. And as I tell you that, I'm not telling you that so that you can dare God in any kind of manner. But I'm going to be honest with you. I have learned in my life that I cannot go before God and try to put on another face and put on a brave front and tell God how cheerful I am when I'm not cheerful. I cannot go before God and tell Him how great I feel about things when I don't feel great about things. One of the things that I have come to know, that when I go to God, that I must come to God honestly about what I truly feel and about where I'm at in life. I will never go forward. I will never progress forward if I'm not very honest with God about where I am right now. I know where I wish to be. I know where I would like to be. But oftentimes where I wish to be, where I would like to be, is not where I'm at. Maybe you're here this morning and maybe you find yourself in that place. You know where you would like to be. You know where you would wish to be. You know where you'd like for everybody else to think you are. But to be honest, deep down inside, you're not there. So I had one of those moments with God this week where I just told Him, I just laid it out. I said, God, I don't know what else to do. I'm just going to lay it out flat and plain for you. You already know this about me. I'm not surprising you with anything that I'm saying. But more or less, I have to be honest with myself so that I can be honest with you. So in doing so, I found myself in a place of worship. You say, well, you don't sound like you're very worshipful. I wasn't at the moment. I'll be honest with you, at that very moment, I wasn't very worshipful, but I did through the course of the day as I was dwelling on how I'd been honest with God, how there was a healing came about from the honesty in which that I had shared with God, because at that point God started showing me places where His faithfulness was at work that I wasn't recognizing. God started showing me places where He was working on things that I didn't realize. God started showing me places where I saw His hand at work and I didn't even realize for a moment that He was in the midst of it. And I may have never been able to see that had I not become honest with God and honest with myself. Nehemiah, as he went before the king, he said, listen, this is where I'm at. My heart's broken. I don't know how else to tell you this. Jerusalem is torn down and my heart is aching for it. Because of his honesty, the king went to him and said, listen, here's what I'll do. I'll let you go back and I'll let you rebuild Jerusalem. I'll let you take care of that. So he authorized him to go and to take stock in Jerusalem and tell him what he needed. One of the things that I found in the second chapter of Nehemiah, as I was looking at Nehemiah, it says that Nehemiah went out by himself. It says he went out by himself and he looked on the state of Jerusalem and he had to be honest about the state of Jerusalem. Here's where it becomes hard for me as a human being and as a pastor. When I look out at the state of the church, one of the hardest things for me to do is to be honest about the state of the church. I never want to be critical of God's church, but I have to be honest about God's church. And there are places where we, as God's church, can do better. There are places where we, as God's church, can move up closer. There are places where we as God's church, at Clear Branch Baptist Church, could do better. And in doing so, there could be a great work that is done. But until we become honest and we do an evaluation, there's no way that we will ever come to that place. Nehemiah could have walked around the walls of Jerusalem and said, you know what? There's some walls still standing. There's still some stones stacked up on top of each other, so I think that's adequate. Maybe if I put a few sticks here or there and patch it, it'll be okay. Sometimes I believe that's the way that we approach things. We approach things as a church, we approach things in our life. Rather than fix the problem, we just want to patch the problem. Rather than be honest with ourselves and reflective in prayer, we just want enough of a good feeling to soothe over the trouble spot in our life. We will pray just enough and study just enough to get us a little salve, if you will, to treat the symptoms without ever really treating the disease.
Amen.
We oftentimes just want relief from a symptom. I don't care if the disease is healed. I just want relief from the symptom. I don't mind if there's something really bad going on in here as long as I don't hurt on the outside. And I wonder sometimes if we don't do that in our spiritual life. The way we attend church and the spirit which we attend church, I wonder sometimes if it's not more the spirit to gain salve for our hurt feelings rather than treat what is truly on the inside that is not right. Nehemiah, as he had to be honest about staying in Jerusalem, said he went back and he said, listen, he said, we got some problems. He said, there's some major league holes in the walls. There's some major gaps that we got to fix. We got a lot of work to do. And you know what? Here's what I love about it was that Nehemiah wasn't scared of the job. I want to ask you today, when you look at your life, and you look at places where you maybe need to move up or change things in your life, are you scared to confront those things this morning? Are you scared to confront the things in your life that you know needs to get out of your life? It may cause me pain. It may cause me anxiety. It may cause me some trouble. I may have to change the whole structure of my life or of my relationship or what's going on in my life. I may have to change all that. And it causes me anxiety to think of having to change all those things in order to get right where I need to be with God. But can I tell you today that when you face the challenge of the example that Nehemiah had, and you look that it was hard work that had to be done, but yet he did it anyway, there was a great work that was accomplished. You may be thinking that the challenge is too great. Let's go back and remember what Nehemiah done. It said that Nehemiah prayed. It said Nehemiah realized something. And here's where, as a pastor, oftentimes I fail and I have to apologize to you. Sometimes I feel like I have to do it myself. Sometimes I feel like that all the weight is mine and mine alone. As Nehemiah went and he walked around the walls and he was there examining the walls and he looked up, there was no way that Nehemiah was physically capable of building the walls back by himself. Nehemiah realized that he must have help. So here's what Nehemiah did. He recruited help. He realized that he could not build the stones back by himself. And he realized he had to have help. And here's what I'm asking you today. I have to be very honest. I cannot, and I don't think you expected me to, but I cannot carry Clear Branch Baptist Church on my back alone. That it takes each and every person sitting in this congregation this morning. It takes each and every person that may be watching on Facebook this morning. It takes each and every person that participates in the services at Clear Branch Baptist Church this morning to realize that each and every one of us must lock arms, hand in hand, and work to build God's church.
Amen.
Every one of us. Nehemiah, there's no way, if Nehemiah would have tried to reach these holes in the wall by himself, then Nehemiah would have fell over dead from the exertion. Nehemiah would have just fell over. If Nehemiah would have tried it with just one or two people, they would have all fell dead because of the exertion. It was a great effort of many people. If you look at the book of Nehemiah, there was a whole list of families there that sent people to work. And that tells me that when you go to do something, the bigger the project, the more people you need. And in building God's church, we need people to step forward and say, you know what? Here am I, send me. Have an Isaiah moment in your life. Say, hey, if there's something that needs to be done, put me in, coach. I can do it. Rather than look around and point at someone else and say they can do it. Oftentimes, I believe that we always expect someone else to shoulder the load. When in reality, that was never the intent at all. Nehemiah knew he had to have help, so in the 4th chapter, he asked for help. He compels people to work together. He looks to people and he says, listen, here's what I want you to do. He says, I want you to stand arm in arm. I want you to protect one another. While some are working, others protect. And while those that are protected are working, you stand back and put your sword on. I want you to help. I want you to be involved in some way. So if you're here today, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter whether you think you have a place or not, whether you feel like you have an active position or not. There is no place in Clear Branch Baptist Church where you cannot be about God's business. You say, well, they got that territory staked out. They got that claim. There is no place where anybody here doesn't have something to do. If maybe your particular area right now is not busy, then how about coming alongside those that are? And say, you know what? If you're busy, let me help you. Let me shoulder your load. Let me pray for you. Let me encourage you. Let me stand beside you. I want you to realize that while you're standing and while you're working and while you're doing, that there is somebody standing beside of you to start you. At the moment's notice that you need help, I will be there for you. What an encouragement it would be. For those ministry leaders that we have here in our church, if they knew without a shadow of a doubt that in a troubled time in their life, or a weak time in their life, or a busy time in their life, that there's always someone that will stand beside of them and help them, and they never have to worry about it. Nehemiah encourages people to do this. He told them, he said, listen, he said, guard them, do this. And also in the 4th chapter, Nehemiah realized that there would be those who would resist to all their might. Let me go ahead and tell you something as a word of warning. As you step forward today and as you commit yourself to working in God's church, I will be very honest with you this morning. There will be those who resist. There will be those who tell you that's my spot to stand in. There will be those who tell you, I don't like it that way. There will be those who tell you it's 1 degree too warm or too cold. But let me tell you this, when you purpose yourself for God's work, you do not let anybody detract from the work that God gives you. Nehemiah could have took the discouragement that was offered to him, and he could have said, you know what, I give up, I'm done, I'm out of here. And instead he said, you know what, I don't care, God's got a work to do, and it's going to be done. Oh, that we had more people who would get determined like Nehemiah, and not look at the detractors and those who would discourage, but look into what his work actually is. And his work was commissioned and authorized by God. Oh, can I ask you today? Can I ask you today, in your service to God, do you feel like you have been authorized and commissioned by God to do what you're doing? You say, Brother Andrew, I'm not called to preach. I didn't ask you if you were called to preach. I'm asking you this. In whatever you're doing, from sweeping the floor to preaching a message to singing a song, to praying, to teaching Sunday school, to help with the nursing, whatever it is that God has laid upon your heart to do, can you say without a shadow of a doubt that God has authorized and commissioned me to help this, and I will stand on that authorization and commitment and do it for the glory and honor of God today? See, that's what we need, is more people who won't back down or bow down under any pressure or under any weight. There were those that said, you know what, this work is so great, and there's so much stuff that's in the way, I don't know if we can ever do this. I love the fact that they didn't let that stop them. They said, you know what, it doesn't matter how tall the task. You say, Brother Randy, we're coming out of a COVID pandemic, hopefully, and it's a troubled time, and churches are squandering or floundering all over the place, and you're expecting us to pick up and go and grow. That's exactly what I'm expecting. When Nehemiah went up to build these walls, there was never a hope of it being easy. There was a plan of hard work and determination that was needed. And if ever there was a time that God's people need to know that we face hard work, that we can do it if we're determined to do it, now is that time. A Nehemiah type moment. And here's what happens. In 52 days, they built a wall. By today's standards, it is unbelievable. An accomplishment that goes beyond scope and imagination. And the reason they did it was because simply this. They had a mind to work. The people had a mind to work. And as I was studying about Nehemiah, and I know you say, well, what does that have to do with Acts, the 4th chapter? And 1 Corinthians, the 2nd chapter. Randy, you're leading us all over the Word of God today. You're exactly right. Because I'll be honest with you, sometimes as a pastor, I get so fixated on all the other little things that are going on, I have to apologize for something. I have to apologize that sometimes I get so busy in the busyness that I forget. That in the 4th chapter of the book of Acts, it says it so plainly. In the 12th verse, it says, neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. Sometimes I get so busy in trying to help out with all the other things that I forget what my true mission is. My true mission is the preaching of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And if I ever forget that, and if I ever get to the place where I don't do that, then I must apologize. If I ever get to the place where Jesus Christ is not at the forefront of each and every message, then I must apologize. Because let me tell you something, you can have the biggest church in town, and you can have the busiest church in town, and if you do not have Jesus Christ in the center of it, it will never be successful. Amen. So we must realize today that as we build the wall, as we build the church, that it must be built around none other than Jesus Christ himself, because there is none other name given under heaven whereby men must be saved. I'm going to ask you, and I want you to have that moment of candid honesty. Is Jesus Christ at the center of your life right now? Have you become so encompassed with all the things that are going on in the world? Have you become so entangled with all the other stuff going on that Jesus Christ has lost his place in your life? Or is Jesus Christ at the center? As you sit in the congregation this morning, I'm going to ask you this question. Are you still in love with Jesus? Do you remember what it felt like? Do you remember what it felt like the day you got saved? For some of you, it may have been years ago. For some, maybe not so long. But do you remember what it felt like when you got saved? I remember that. And I'm so thankful that I can remember back. Andrew and I had the opportunity to go away last weekend, and we went to Myrtle Beach. We haven't been to Myrtle Beach in 15 or 20 years. Before we went on our honeymoon, and we went by the place we stayed on our honeymoon. And as we was driving around town, there were so many memories of our young married life, and we was taking a nostalgic trip down memory lane. And we used to go there when the kids were little. And so she said, do you remember when the kids did this? I said, no. Do you remember when we did this? No. Do you remember that? No. It got to the point where I was honestly starting to worry myself. There is so much that I don't remember. There's so much, I guess, that through the busyness and pressures of life that just got filed away somewhere in the deep recesses of my mind that I just forgot. Praise God, I've never forgot what it's like to be saved. of all the things I've experienced in life and all the feelings that I've had the opportunity to feel in life. From the feeling of seeing my bride on our wedding day that I remember. My children being born. Precious times in my life. Praise God, the best one ever today. I never forgot what it felt like to have the burdens of death and hell relieved from my soul. To realize that as I got up off of an altar, that forever, eternally, I was saved by the grace of God. Amen. Heaven help us as we as God's people ever forget what it feels like to get saved. If you've gotten to the place where you have forgotten what it felt like to have salvation brought to your soul, heaven help you. Because here's why. Because if you remember what it feels like to be saved, then you will be compelled to share that with other people. Through the building of a church, through the ministry opportunities, through all that we do, you'll have the opportunity and be compelled to share that gospel with someone else. There's good news in Jesus Christ. Amen. And there's saving grace to be had. And those burdens that you're feeling right now, and that guilt and shame can so be relieved at the foot of the cross. For there is none other name given under heaven whereby men must be saved other than Jesus Christ. In 1 Corinthians, when Paul went over and he was talking to the church at Corinth, in the second chapter of 1 Corinthians, Paul says this, "And I, brethren, when I came to you, came not with excellency of speech or of wisdom, declaring to you the testimony of God, for I determined not to know anything among you, save Jesus Christ and Him crucified." Paul said, you know what? He said, all the rest of it doesn't matter. Because I have determined the most important thing, and I'm paraphrasing, but the most important thing is Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Take away all the stories, take away all the associations, take away all the other things that are going on in life. Let me tell you what the most important thing is, and that is Jesus Christ and Him crucified. I know you say, how do you tie Nehemiah together with all this? I don't. I just got to preach two messages in one. Now I think sometimes we forget why we do what we're doing. Sometimes I think we forget we have a reason to do what we're doing. We talk about Trunk or Treat, we talk about our outreaches, we talk about our children's ministry. We don't do these things just because every other church does them. We don't do these things just because it's something to do. We do these things because we have an opportunity to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with those around us. Sometimes you may feel like it's time wasted or there's no return on your investment. But let me tell you something about this, that any time you can invest a little bit of Jesus Christ into anyone's life, it is never a waste. Amen. Anytime that you can take the opportunity to invest a little bit of Jesus' love in someone's life, it is never a waste. Whether it be through a trunk or treat, a children's ministry, whether it be through a music ministry, whether it be through a senior ministry, or ministering to those that you meet in town. It's not a formal part of a church ministry, but you just have to be compelled to share a good word with them, or a little bit of Christ's love. It's never a waste. And whether it has the name of Clear Branch Baptist Church attached to it or not, it's all about Jesus, or at least it should be. It should be all about Jesus Christ. As Paul said, he said, I'm determined not to know anything among you save Jesus Christ and Him crucified. I'm determined that that is the most important thing. Today I want to ask you as a church member, as a person that is involved here at our church this morning, if you're sitting here and hearing a word, I want to ask you, when was the last time you took a very raw, honest look at your life? When was the last time you set an honest reflection of who you are and where you are in God's plan? And if you have, or if you are you happy with where you're at? Are you happy with where you're at right now? Are you happy with what your service looks like for Jesus Christ? Not just for the church, but for Jesus Christ. Are you happy with what people see in your life reflecting Jesus Christ to them? If not, then I ask you this morning, would you like to change that? Would you like to change that? If you're not happy this morning, I'm going to have to do Will come and get a song. I know this message may seem scattered and all over the place, but it's okay. Whenever I was praying about this morning, I asked God, I said, God, I said, just whatever it is you want, however it is you want, I'm on board. As Paul said, I didn't come with excellency of speech or of wisdom. I just know what to do. If God gives me something, that's just a gift. And I firmly believe there's folks here this morning that probably need to take a good, honest look at themselves. You know what I'm saying? They're bad people. Okay? Please don't get that wrong. Sometimes when we say that, people think, well, I must be bad. I don't look at myself in the mirror and say, hey, he's a bad guy. Matter of fact, I look at myself and say, hey, he's a pretty good guy. But I also take a look at myself in the mirror and say, you know what? There's times where old Randy needs to be honest about things. And what people see on the outside is not matching what I know is on the inside. And I need to fix what's on the inside so it matches what people may think. And I want them to see Jesus Christ in my life. This morning, if you're at that place, may I invite you, not as someone who is going to come up and maybe you'd like to come up and pray. You say, well, Brother, this really an altar. So what is a pile of rocks in the woods? That's what Noah did. Abraham, Jacob, David. I guess they got it right. We can get it right? If you like to come and pray, don't think I'm going to pray with you as someone who, wow, he must be holy. I'm going to pray with you as someone who knows exactly what you're feeling, okay? Lord, I'm just being honest with you. There's some stuff we need to get straight. I keep